Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome again to our third session. I'm so glad to be able to see you all again. Quite a number of you have been quite consistent in turning up for this webinar series. So can I just have Shuling to help me flash the, thank you. Just a minute. Okay, yes. Well, good evening. Well, my name is Chin Yet. I'm a staff with Crew, and we have been holding this webinar series for the last 2 weeks. This is the third session, and I'm looking forward for tonight that we can have a good time together. Okay, there are some technical glitch here. Let me see how. Okay, can we show the next slide, please? Well, on becoming an authentic and healthy healthcare professional. Now, before we begin, I just want to talk about this aspect of on becoming. If you know that this tense of on becoming is actually it means a process. There's never an end. There's never an end point. We are always in the process of developing and growing. So I like this. There's this illustration, that I heard some time ago, quite a long time ago, about the development and growth of a person. That the breadth, the breadth of our success, the breadth of our influence, okay, needs to be matched by the depth and the growth of our personal character and development as a person. So it's very crucial that that through this series that we learn how we can grow as a person, at the same time that we can grow and develop also in the area of your competence and in your future career. Maybe some of you right now are even healthcare professionals, that you can grow and develop in your career as a healthcare professional. Now, so that's why through this webinar series, my desire is to create awareness, of this importance of growing to become an authentic and healthy healthcare professional. I know that the time that we have for each session is very short, and there's so much to cover. And in fact, the book that this series is based on, Changes That Heal, by Dr. Henry Cloud, he talks a lot, for each session. So actually, what I've been doing for my part is always to give a very broad spectrum and broad overview of each topic. So I'm not doing justice to it. But this purpose of this webinar series is to raise our awareness, to all these different areas of growth, all the four principles of growth. Today we're going to cover the second one. So once we're aware, then we can make changes. Okay, have the choice to change. And my plan or my hope is that, through this webinar series, at the end of it, I can invite anyone who is interested, for the masterclass where we can dive deeper into exploring some of this principle to implement them in our lives, because the time we have for each of these 5 weeks is very short. It doesn't give us time and the space and also the environment to really go deep to talk about how to implement. So my desire is really at the end of these 5 weeks, if you're interested, that we can decide whether you want to go on further for a masterclass where we talk about the application. And also at the same time, one of the things I want to support you on becoming an authentic and healthy healthcare professional is to be able to connect us into a Facebook group. Can you have the next slide? This Facebook group, I just thought of it, over just the last session that we had, and it just pops up into my mind as I'm thinking, hey, how can I create maybe a continuing support for each of you, or maybe even for future healthcare professionals and students to be part of this group, where on this Facebook group, I'll be posting up articles, posts, or even whole discussions, and maybe in future, to have Facebook live talks on related topics on this aspect of becoming a healthy and authentic healthcare professional. So this is my hope, and I do hope that later on I'll send you all this Facebook link so that you all can invite you all to just sign up to join in. Currently, I'm still in the process of going to build up the content. Okay, so because this is an idea that just came out over the last few days. Right, so as we start, I hope that you all can turn off your mic, and if possible, please turn on your video so that the guests and myself can see you and can see one another, even though we are, cut off by the technology, but our eyesight, your eyes speak a lot to us, as we look, as we say, as we share, we can see you, and it encourages us, motivates us to share more. Okay, and also, during the session, please feel free to just type in the questions, keep the questions coming. As I mentioned in the last session, questions motivate me, questions, I believe also for the guests. The more questions that come in, it gets us pumped up, that we can share more, that is upon our heart, and that y'all can be blessed more. All right. So I want to introduce the guest for tonight. Okay, he is Mr. Bei Qing Yao. You can call him QY. Okay, QY is he's a counseling psychologist currently working in private practice. He currently works mainly with children, youths, and adults. Okay, later on we shall hear more from him as he gives his personal perspective about this topic today. Okay, let me just do a recap. Last week we were talking about the importance of bonding to others, right? Having an emotional connection. So, and it's a crucial part of the development of ourselves as healthy people. Because I let you all watch this video by this Harvard professor that they did this 75-year study that close relationships, close connections are key to our long-term emotional and psychological well-being. Yeah, but as a result of growing up, we may face, we could have faced challenges in interacting with people that cause us to shut down, to close down ourselves, to protect, all those defense mechanisms. But for our health, for our well-being, even as currently right now, as some of you are healthcare students and or maybe even some of you are right now working as a healthcare professional, it is it is key, for your longevity in serving in the healthcare profession, because connections do bring about your general wealth and your mental well-being. So bonding is very crucial. And the topic for today is actually called separating. Can I have a next slide? Okay. Session 3 today. This is the second principle about growth, right? It's talking about setting ourselves apart. Now you may think that it's quite weird, right? I mean, last week we were talking about bonding to others, but today we're going to separate. What's the connection, between bonding and separation? Let's go to the next slide. Well, it talks about how the relationship between this bonding and separation is this: that attachment gives us that safety, that security, and strength to separate. I mentioned before that the moment that a baby is born, right? This baby needs to be attached, needs to start bonding with the mother, and as the baby begins to grow, this build up of connection, emotional connection with the parents is very important, because as the baby grows up to become a toddler, this toddler starts to gain a greater capacity of that emotional attachment and connection to their parents. This strength of emotional connection enables the toddler to be able to go out to explore by himself or herself. See, so as the toddler grows, right, when the mother or the father goes into the next room, the toddler doesn't cry. Why? Because this child has stored up enough of that emotional connection and attachment to know that the parent, the father or the mother, can leave him or her, and he can be alone to play by himself. And this is the beginning of the build-up of the development of separation. And it's so important because as the toddler starts to go into kindergarten, as some of you may be parents or going to be parents, for a kid to go into kindergarten or nursery or play school, that's often a very challenging time. So the bonding part becomes the foundation, right, to enable the kid to be able to have that strong enough emotional connection to separate himself or herself, to find his own individuality, to find his or her own uniqueness. So that's the relationship between bonding and separation. Okay, now can I have a next slide? before we dive into the topic for tonight, let's do a simple exercise, okay? Now, I want you all, okay, to type in the chat box. I'm going to time, okay? In 1 minute's time, type in as many items you can on the things that you can control. Okay? Understand the question? In 1 minute's time. So just type right now. I haven't started a time. Please wait, okay? When I say ready, go, then you start to type what you can control. Type in the chat box as many as possible. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, type in the chat box. As many as possible, okay? Let's see. 15 seconds more. 10, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, stop. All right, let's see. The phenomenon that stems from the prefrontal cortex. Wow. You must explain later on. The phenomenon that stems from I know the prefrontal cortex is the brain just behind the forehead. But what's the phenomenon? Thinking, is it? Oh, okay. Wow, if you're referring to thinking, the thoughts, wow, that's a very complicated and very, what do you call that, advanced way of explaining that. Okay, how you can communicate reaction to situation, yeah, your actions, your words, what time you go to sleep. Yeah, actually, if you have more time, I believe that you can put in more, right? Okay, for the next 1 minute, I want you all to do the next one, all right? What you cannot control. Just type in as many as possible. Ready, go. Okay. What you cannot control. Right, circumstances. The weather, yeah, we cannot control the weather. Yeah, everyone else that covers everything. Change, yeah, change is always so constant. COVID, you cannot control laughter, okay? You must be someone who likes to laugh a lot, right? Time, you cannot control time. Well, in a sense, you cannot control, yeah. To a certain extent, you cannot control time. Okay, 7, 6, no more already. Wow, okay. 3, okay, 1, time's up. All right, good. Yeah, some of you just use one word to cover everything, everyone else apart from myself. That's great. Yeah. So, can I have the next slide? Okay, shooting. Now, just now, as you are typing, I just managed to compile everything your type in. So actually, it looks something like this, right? Talking about what you can control, your time, your the time that you sleep, basically taking care of yourself, whatever. And what you cannot control, is outside of that circle, like weather, how people think about you, everything else, everybody else apart from yourself. Now, actually, if you have more time to do this exercise, I think it will be quite good because there are some questions that you can actually process through, like as you're doing this exercise, especially if you have more time to write down, how do you feel, when you realize that there are so many things that you can control? Yeah. And actually, if over time, you begin to find that actually this is so powerful because a lot of times we think that we cannot control a lot of things. But actually, there are so many other things that we can control. Like, you can control the blinking of your eyes. You can control your thinking. Just now, the phenomenon that happens in your prefrontal cortex. You can control your waking up hours. Yeah, your sleeping time. you can control a lot of things. And I think this exercise helps us to be centered and to be able to realize how powerful you are, especially in the time of COVID situation. Uh, COVID, I mean, as you all maybe have been reading the news, have been keeping up to date, it has brought a lot of uncertainties to people, because as they think about the future, uh, maybe 1 month down the road, uh, what's going to happen, and it just throws people out, throws people off. So when you begin to realize that, hey, what are things you can control? It actually helps to stabilize us, right? So the reason I want you to do this exercise, okay, uh, if I have to, to compile once again, it will look something like this. What you cannot control is anybody else. Somebody wrote earlier on, outside of your circle. But what you can control is yourself, your thoughts, your behavior, your words, your choices, your actions, reactions, future, everything. So I think this exercises, it talks about how what you've just done, is to demarcate your boundaries, right? And boundaries are everywhere. We talk about uh, you know boundaries between country and country, territorial, boundaries, fences. If you live in a condo, it's all nicely uh, uh, bounded. No, even our clothes are a form of boundary. Our skin is a form of boundaries. So there are many boundaries that we talk about, and it's very easy to notice all these physical boundaries in our lives because they are tangible, they can be touched. But the boundaries that we talk about today in this session is more of an emotional and psychological boundary. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. So boundaries, okay, when I talk about boundaries for the session today, it's actually talking about emotional boundaries. It defines who we are and who we are not. Now, this sense of separateness forms are the basis of our identity. Yeah, because you're so different, that even the choices that we make can be very different from another person. So it says this aspect of boundary says who we are not, what we like, what we do not like, what we want and what we do not want. So boundaries can be tight, right? When the boundaries are tight, that means this person is very protective. People cannot come near to him. He is very strict with his yes and no's, what he says yes to, what he says no's to. And boundaries can be loose. When the boundaries are loose, that means uh, anyone, people's thoughts, people's opinions, people's view, people's emotions can affect this person because his boundaries are loose. And boundaries can be just nice, just appropriate. Yeah. So we're going to look at it today and we're going to see how when boundaries are too tight, what happens. Maybe it's not in detail, but just briefly, just a glance through. If boundaries are too loose, it will bring about a whole set of emotional and psychological kind of challenges, right? So, and the most destructive result of the lack of boundaries is physical abuse. We do read of newspapers where there are family members, they suffer physical abuse from let's say from a father or a mother, right? Especially towards children, they don't dare to voice out. Even let's say wives suffer the physical abuse, or even husbands suffer physical abuse. Okay, things are happening like this, so they don't dare to voice out, right? So physical abuse, are very common, but the more challenging part is emotional abuse or psychological abuse. Now, this is the part where many of us we may not be so aware of. How are we receiving that emotional abuse or even that psychological or abuse by people? Now, because we cannot touch it or feel it as compared to physical abuse. Physical abuse, you can feel it immediately, the affliction, the pain. Yeah, but emotional is more of inward. You do know that something is wrong, but maybe you cannot put a finger to it. So emotional, psychological abuse are very real nowadays, right? So imagine what it feels like if you're to live a life of being responsible for someone's feelings and out of control of your own. And that is very terrible, isn't it? Yeah. Can I have the next slide? So the essence of boundaries, lies in this. Where does my responsibility end? And where does someone else begin? Now, this is very difficult. If you talk about, let's say, in the context of, let's say, some of you are students, right? When you know that you have to be responsible for your own work, for your own part. But what if your friends ask you to come to you for help? Shouldn't you help them? Yeah. But what if someone becomes over dependent on you, for your help? So should you say no or what? And all these boundaries play out in the area of our social relationships, be it in families, in school, maybe in a workplace, or even in between friends, right? And it's so challenging because this aspect of boundaries, especially with people we are bonded to, okay, we have an emotional connection with. What happens when we don't agree with the person that we are closely connected to? And I believe that some of us, in fact many of us, we may have experienced this, especially with our parents. So later on I'll share some examples in my own in my own journey with my parents, even right now, even as a yeah mid 40s man. I do run into this kind of challenges with my own mom. Yeah, but then for healthy relationships to take place, and for the health and growth of our personal development, we need to establish boundaries, right? So that we can become separate, differentiate ourselves from one another, especially from the people we are close to. Because once boundaries are being set, it enhances the closeness of our relationships. But I know that especially in a Chinese kind of environment, where we grow up in Asia context, it's harder. This aspect of boundaries we are not so aware of, because we come very fused or very enmeshed together as we grow up, in a family context. Now, in this book by Dr. Henry Cloud, he talks about the biblical basis of boundaries. I'm not going to go deep into it, but I just want to mention that boundary is very interesting to know that boundaries begin even in the beginning of uh, in the creation of the world, in the first book of Genesis. And when God created man, see, there's still a separation between God and man. See, and because God loves man, and in every love relationship there needs to be freedom, the freedom to allow the other person to be who he or she is. Now, when you see that, especially, maybe some of you may be Christians, okay? You may know the aspect that uh, God created man with a free will, you see. And to have a free will means that that man can choose, okay? And when man can choose, that means he can choose to do what is according to what God wants, or what he does, or what God does not want. So freedom involves, or love, or in fact I would say that in a love relationship that involves freedom, the freedom to choose, see. And for freedom to exist, there must be choice, right? And we know that maybe some of you, or most of you, may know that the story of the narrative of the Bible in Genesis, that Adam and Eve, they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. See, so that tree was being put there uh, as a form of you can say that it's a form of choice, because otherwise man will not know whether he has free choice or not. Because God could have created man with no free choice at all, but with no free choice there'll be no love relationship. See, but with free choice there comes a boundary where that person can choose to do certain things or not, out of that will of the other person. So, and we know that um, in the Genesis narrative, can I have the next slide? There's a result of sin. Okay, last week we talked about how sin, in the book of Genesis, has destroyed the bonding and emotional connection between God and man, and also between man and woman. But in the same way, this sin has also, in a way, destroyed or corrupted, our sense of separateness, our boundaries, and our responsibility. We tend to become fused, we tend to encroach into each other's responsibilities, each other's boundaries, and we try to make decisions for somebody else, or we expect the other person to accept our own choices. Yeah. So we see this, that how it is difficult. That's why we live in a fallen world, and the basis of this book, Changes That Heal, is to recover what it means to live once again in the image of God, that each one of us can grow healthily, to establish healthy boundaries in terms of our relationships with people. right? So the more we know, so that's why, you know, this topic of boundaries is so crucial. The more we know what we can control, are in control of, and responsible for, the more we can know who we really are. Because boundaries determine your identity. Yeah. And the clearer you know who you are, what you stand for, who you represent, it's easier to build relationships, because you're easy you're it's easier to love yourself as well as to give yourself to others. You see, if our boundaries are unclear, it's very hard to give your true self to another person, because there's nothing to give. You're basically just, you know, giving in to whatever people say. So that's why having that unique identity, clear boundaries of who you are, knowing what you want, are so important. So what are the areas that separate you and I as a unique individual? Here, we're going to look at this. Can we have the next slide, Juling? Yeah, so this is what we see, right? Earlier on, we are showing you this, right? Just to highlight a few examples. The first one is physical appearance, that we can be responsible for our physical appearance and our body. You know, like let's say, you know, how you eat, what you eat, right? If you don't like a certain, you do not like your body weight, you know, there are things that you can do about that, right? You can choose the proper food, or you know, a certain body shape size. You can choose certain clothes that can enhance, accentuate, you know, your beauty and your handsomeness. You can learn to you know, put on makeup for the ladies. So you can have you're more powerful than you think you are, right? All these choices you can make in terms of physical appearance and even your body. You can set limits, especially, you know, be aware of like sexual abuse or physical abuse. You know, you can say what's the limit is, draw the line, be very clear about the line. Yeah, I believe that, you know, even from since young, for the ladies, for the gentlemen, for the guys, our parents have taught us, right, to be careful about, you know, how we protect our bodies. So I mean, this is something that all of us know. The next one is feelings. Okay, we are responsible for our feelings. Okay, so I cannot blame someone else for making me angry. Let's say I'm driving along the road, right? Driving, and then somebody cut into my path. I cannot say that, oh, you make me angry, just because he cut into my path. I'm the one who wants to be angry. Because by blaming the other person for making me angry, I'm actually giving power to that person. I'm making that person more powerful. See, but actually, you and I, we have the choice to decide whether to get angry or not. Okay, so we are responsible for our emotions, for our feelings. I remember, like, you know, one example is how, you know, I mean, that was many years ago. Right now I have two boys, both of them are in their teenage years. When they're still younger, you know, at that time, my nephews, okay, my elder sister, you know, she also has two boys. So because my mom takes care of my sister's kids, so actually she already expects. So there was one day she called me, and she called me and told me, you know, I can sense the tone from the phone call that she expects me to bring down my two boys. You know, we stay in the west, to bring my two boys to the east. That's where my sister and my mom, they are staying. To bring my two boys down to the east to play with my sister's kids. So I can sense that my mom is very insistent, and I told her no, right? And I can sense her displeasure because it's too sudden. She never, you know, informed me of give me time to respond. Yeah, so I felt that she's like encroaching into my boundaries, my limits, and I mean, I come from a family, especially in my growing up years. I you know I seldom, in fact, I never, you know, go against my parents, you know, desires. Later on, I'll come to another example again, you know, about the choice of school and the courses to study in the university. So yeah, and so coming from that background, you know how difficult it is, you know, for me to learn to set boundaries, to even say no to my mother. Yeah, I know that she's not happy, yeah, but also because I need to take care of my family as well, so I have to say no to her. So we need to be we cannot be responsible for others people's feeling, right? I cannot be responsible for my mom's feeling that she is not happy, she's angry with me, she's displeased. Because if I feel responsible for her feelings, then I can no longer make decisions, you know, based on what is right, okay, for that situation in that timing. And I'll make choices based on how the other person will feel about my choices, right? And that's a very painful life to live. Always living in a like in Chinese they say 看别人的脸色, or you look at the face of the other person, it's like, oh, if I make this choice, will the person be happy or angry or mad? So that's a very difficult or terrible place, to live in. Okay, next one is behavior, right? Another area we can be responsible for is our behavior. We need and we can have the power to own our behavior, right? And and when we talk about behavior, there's this law of reaping and sowing, right? What you reap is what you sow. I think this principle of law of reaping and sowing is very crucial for us in terms of behavior. If we disown our responsibility for our behavior, you know, we go out of control, we go out of whack, because we cannot go anywhere we want, we cannot achieve anything because we are simply giving our responsibility away. We expect somebody else to make the decision for us. See? And so we tend to be reactive or we tend to be passive, right? But when we begin to understand the law of reaping and sowing, we begin to own our responsibility in terms of behavior. We own the choices that we can change our behavior. If there's something you desire, if something that you want, you can set it as a goal and work towards it. And that is a very empowering life that you can live. Okay, if we don't like your present situation, you have a choice to change. See, we don't have to blame the people around you, right? You don't have to blame the situation. We can make changes. So that's a very proactive, a very initiative life, a very empowering life. Okay? And the other aspect of behavior is that know that people are responsible for their own actions. We cannot take responsibility for them. Okay, as much as we want to help people, we need to be aware that we do not, encroach into the boundary where we help them to make the changes for them. See, because that will cause the other person to become dependent on us, right? And moving on is the area of thoughts. Okay, the thoughts I did not put it down because it's inside the circle that's been represented um, in the picture, right? The thoughts. A lot of times we are not aware of the thoughts that goes on in our mind because they are very automatic. They happen very fast, and so we just allow any kind of thoughts, the phenomenon that happens in our prefrontal cortex. So we don't become aware of our thoughts, and that's very dangerous because some of these thoughts can be very self-critical, very judgmental. They stir up, they create, they affect our emotional growth and life. So we need to be responsible of thoughts. Okay, we need to become aware what's going on now. What am I thinking right now? See, for example, you will not let anybody touch you, right? Your body, for example, right? You will not let anybody encroach into your physical boundary. So in the same way, we have a boundary in terms of our thought life. Okay, we don't let any thought that just comes in. So challenging distorted thought is a way of owning and taking responsibility for our thoughts. Yeah, and this is something we'll talk about later on briefly, right? Now, the next one is, okay, our abilities and desires, all right? Now, this is the one that I want to share. I was sharing about how a lot of, as we grow up, sometimes our parents, right? Or maybe as you grow up later on, your authoritative figures in your life, they may expect, they may tell you, they may tell you their expectations on you in terms of their abilities and your desires, and their hope that you can fulfill their desires for them. See, and that just robs you and robs us of the choice that we can have to discover our own abilities and desires. Now, for my own personal journey, is this, right? Telling you about my growing up background is that, actually in JC, right, from secondary school to JC, I wanted to go to Temasek Junior College because that suits more of my because at that time Temasek Junior College is more of like a Chinese kind of environment, which I would like to continue from my secondary school. But then my parents say, I don't want to go VJ, Victoria is better, in terms of ranking at that time. So I just went, I just followed. So I never really said, I just, okay, anything okay lah. And when it comes to choosing on my university course, actually I wanted to do social work, but then my parents were telling me, no lah, I need social work, cannot earn much. Yeah, go and choose something else. So in fact, I decided, okay, I did computer engineering, which I did not really enjoy, and I don't really have a flair for it. And also because my results are not that good, I cannot get into business, so I have to do computer engineering. So in the end, well, I finished, I graduated, um, and in the end, I didn't do computer engineering. After graduating, in fact, what I went into was into spiritual counseling work. Yeah, and even right now, a lot of my work that I'm doing is quite in the area of helping people. So you begin to see that how yeah, as eventually I slowly begin to find out what I want, what my desires are, what my abilities are, and what my passions are. And it takes a journey for me to know myself, and also to make choices, even to say no, to express my needs even to my parents. So that's a challenging process for each one of us, for us to go. And finally, I think choices, right? Choices. I won't go much into that for the lack of time. Choices. We have choices to make, and right. We a lot of times we may fall into the trap of making choices for people. We try to make them feel guilty, right? If how can you do this to me, right? We make them feel guilty. Yeah, I've been so good to you. How can you do this to me? Or we may try to manipulate people. If you love me, if you really care for me, you will do this, do this. So we try to make choices for people by manipulating or by creating guilt. See, that's encroaching into the boundaries, right? And the other way that choices are being, that boundaries in terms of choices are being crossed is when we make others responsible for our choices. Yeah. Okay. So that's the thing about choices. Now the last one is, I think, I put limits. We all have limits. Okay, we both all have limits in terms of our time, our energy, our money, and ability. So we need to know what our limits are. Okay, so moving on, the next slide is that if we don't set proper boundaries in our lives. Okay, in the book, Dr. Henry Clark mentioned about, well, look at it. I think there are 22 categories of the possible symptoms that may arise, as a result of the lack of loose boundaries. These are loose boundaries or maybe too tight boundaries. Some of them you may be able to identify with, like for example, victim mentality. Victim mentality is, I think, when there's too loose a boundary. We allow people to choices to affect us, and we say that, oh yeah, this person, made me do this. Yeah, that situation caused me to act like this. So I cannot do anything. I cannot make changes. So victim mentality, right? And another one is extreme, okay, extreme dependency, right? Like you become too dependent on the person to make choices for you, that you gave your power away to people to decide for you. Even sometimes you may give the power to circumstances because you just let things be. Yeah, if what happen will happen. So you don't try to achieve, you don't try to make changes, you don't live an empowering life. So we won't go deep into this, yeah. But maybe during the masterclass, we can actually talk more in terms of details. Now, I want to end this time with, like, what are some practical skills for setting boundaries, right? You can take note of it. Like, the first one is to gain awareness and define who you are and who you are not. So in terms of gaining awareness, is this aspect of taking inventory, right? When I talk about taking inventory, is you can look at the different categories earlier on in terms of your behavior, your choices, your limits, your thoughts, right? Take note of all these different your abilities, your desires. Use the different categories that we covered earlier on, like what to decide what's your view on this, what's your value on that. Yeah, what's your personal desires, what are your abilities. You may want to enlist others in helping you, people who know you, people who love you unconditionally, because we need feedback from people in our lives. But there are times where we have blind spots. We cannot see what we do not know. So people around us may be able to speak into our lives to know that, hey, actually, Juliet, I find that you have a passion. I'm not sure. This person who loves you, he's not trying to, enforce his own view, on you. and or yeah, but it's just presenting an observation. I noticed that you seem to enjoy yourself, as you serve people. Could you be, interested in the in social work, or on helping people? Yeah, someone who can journey with you and help you to ask you questions. So we need to help other people to help us, as we discover more about ourselves. And that's why this aspect of connecting with people are important. When you're born with people, you're close with people, you allow people to speak into your lives. They can help you to know about yourself more. The other aspect is to exercise your no muscle. Children know how to say no very easily, right? I have two nephews and one niece. Right now, just 2 years, 2 to 3 years, very cute. So a lot of things you ask them, they just say no. So the only way to get them doing what you want, right, is to ask them negative questions. Like, do you not want to bathe? No. Okay. Then you can get them to do what you want. So it's very interesting. Like, when we're young, we just say no. No comes very easily for us. But sad to say, we have lost, this word has been lost in our vocabulary. So we may slowly need to learn to say no. Maybe you can start with small things. So I'm not sure what challenges you face in terms of saying no. Maybe it's in terms of your schedule, your time. Maybe you're too loose in terms of your time, your schedule, where when people ask you to do something, immediately you say okay or yes. So start from something small. You know yourself more. If you need to, we can dialogue this offline, to discover more about how can you build up that no muscle in your life. Okay. So the other aspect of gaining awareness is to choose your values, right? Know what you stand for, who you are, what you like. Okay. And work towards these values will help you to work towards your goals. I mean, maybe right now you may not know what your values are, but there are a lot of online values inventory. So you may want to just Google online and find a values inventory. They give you like 50 words on different values. You can just start with that and see which of these words resonate with your heart. Okay, and then you try them out. Yeah, I wrote an article about this. Maybe I'll send you the link. You can read up more about how do you discover your values, right? And the other aspect is about being honest, right? In terms of gaining awareness, is to be honest with yourself. Many people do not dare to be honest, with their own likes and dislikes, desires, or wants and don't wants, because they're afraid of offending people. So, but then honesty brings people closer together. So telling your loved ones what's really upon your heart actually helps to strengthen the foundation of love. Okay, so this is the first point about gaining awareness and knowing who you are, right? And the next one, second point about the skills of setting boundaries, is to stop playing the blame game or the victim, the victim mentality game. Yeah, stop playing the victim. So take responsibility for maybe the difficulties, the struggles, and the pain that we may go through. We are not blaming and not blaming others, for what they do. Deal with it. Okay. It does not mean that it does not mean that the people did not did not cause it, but it just means that you deal with it. Okay. You bite the bullet. Okay. You, instead of allowing yourself to continue maybe to suffer the consequences, what are some things that you can do, right, to change the situation? Instead of blaming, saying that you cannot do anything, what is it that you can control? You are more powerful than you think you are, because you can make choices. So because blaming others, blaming the situation does not solve anything. It just gives us excuses not to change, right? It gives excuses to the people. Because playing the victim role is very easy. But when you take the victor mentality, that means you can do something about it. It requires effort. But as you begin to take more of the proactive role, it empowers you. You begin to be more motivated to be able to make changes. So you remember earlier on we did the exercise, what you can control. So if you're caught in a situation where you feel like you're a victim, maybe you can start to do the exercise. What you can control, what you cannot control. So try to start to list down, what are the things in this situation you can control, see, and start to work on those things you can control. You can find that, yeah, you can overcome that challenge or that situation in your life. And the next point, in terms of the skills of setting boundaries, is challenge your distorted thinking. Now, this distorted thinking can be categorized into three areas, which the book Changes That Hume talks more about in detail, like your view about yourself. Now, what is one distorted thinking about yourself? Okay, it may be my wants are not important or my desires are not important. Okay, this could be one of the distorted thinking you have about yourself. Another category about distorted thinking is the view about others. Okay, so an example of it could be people expect me to do this. Yeah, people expect me to do this. So as long as we have this distorted thinking, we'll always be trapped, to act in a certain way. So is this thought, start to think about, is this thought true? Yeah, have I allowed this thought, by choosing this thought, have I allowed people to encroach into my boundary? Yeah, think about that. I think the third category about distorted thinking is the view about your view about God. Or for some of you, it may be Christians. Sometimes we have, or maybe it may not be Christian, could be Catholic or any other religion. Sometimes our view about God could be that this God that I believe in doesn't want me to pursue what I want. Yeah, so that could be another view of God that hinders us. Depending on the background that we come from. Okay. So how do we become aware of these distorted thoughts? You can become aware by, you may, by detecting, your emotions, right? By detecting your emotions, what happens when you're in a situation or when people say something to you or people expect you to do something. Let me show you these three statements, okay? Can we go to the next slide? Now, in these three statements, you take a look at it. These are some examples, It's my job to make me happy and figure out what brings me joy. Now, as you listen, there's a sound of it. As you say to yourself, do you feel a bit discomfort? I don't need permission to be who I am, think what I think. Wow. How does it sound like to you? Does it come across to you as too, yeah, what's that feeling or what's that thought that comes to you when you read these statements? I have a right to feel my feelings no matter what anyone else feels about my feelings. Yeah, is it too strong? But why is it too strong? So actually, try to identify what's the discomfort that's going on in your emotions. So this is one way, as you encounter life, as you interact with people, when you feel slightly discomfort in your heart, yeah, you become aware, start to be more introspective. What is it that this person says that caused me to feel so uncomfortable? Yeah. Why is it that when I say yes to that person, I still feel uncomfortable? Like because we give under obligation. Okay. So try to think about it. So try to detect. I know that it's not easy, and that's why this webinar session doesn't allow us that time frame. So I hope to really go deeper, to deep dive into all these issues. And just to maybe conclude this overview of what we talk about for this chapter in the book, is this conclusion that it's impossible to give away what you do not have. So that's why setting boundaries are a way of determining who you are and what you have. Then you have something to give away, right? The self that you can then choose to give away in love. And so setting boundaries is a loving thing to do, because when you look at boundaries, there's one essence that you cannot escape. Instead of talking about responsibility, our boundaries basically define your sense of responsibility from us and the capacity and the thing that you can give to other people, right? Because boundaries tell us what our lives consist of and what we are responsible for and what we can give to others. So when we give before we are free and truly own ourselves, okay, before you truly know who you are and you give freely, right? Such a giving doesn't make it's not a healthy kind of giving. See, a healthy kind of giving is when you begin to know who you are and what you can offer and you give to others. And that's when you're able to give the best version of yourself. That's where you're able to give freely and give cheerfully to others. So realize what you own and then share with others. Okay, and that's the power of having boundaries in our lives. Okay, so that's the end of this part of the overview of this book. I know we can stop sharing right now, and I want to pass this time. I know that maybe the different ones you may have questions, so you can continue to type in the questions if you have. Okay, later on at the end after our guest shares, we'll the guest and I, QY and I will address these issues. But right now, I'll pass the time to QY, where you continue the second part. Okay, QY.
Oh, thank you, Ching Yet. I thought that you did a very good job covering the book. So I thought we can pang gang already. Just kidding. Okay. Okay. Maybe before we start, right? What I'm going to do is that we may be covering some reflection, and these reflection questions may be a little bit too personal or sensitive, and I understand and I respect that. So one of the things that I want to start off my segment is to actually set off some ground rules. So there's only one ground rule, and the ground rule is whatever that we talk about in tonight's session stays here. So we don't take anything out. We don't comment on other people's comment or sharing. Okay, so can I have everyone's agreement? If you agree, right, there's actually this thumbs up button. Okay, and I want you to show me a thumbs up just to acknowledge what I have shared, and for me to know that you are still here. Okay, all right, I see, and okay, I see. Okay, so as I'm glancing around, it looks like we have like about quite a fair bit of like participants joining in. So I'm going to start off by asking some questions. Okay, that is to help me to understand you a little bit better. And the first question is, how many of you here are healthcare student? If you are a healthcare student, thumbs up. Okay, quite a fair bit. Okay, so maybe just let me hang on for a while to let the hands go down. Okay, I think most of the hands are down. Okay, the next question is, how many of us here are healthcare staff? Hands up if you are healthcare staff. Okay, I am a healthcare staff, so me. And how about the rest? Okay, there are some healthcare staff. Okay, so the next question is, how many of us are either studying or working in the healthcare sector in the medical field? So like, for example, medical doctor, medical para assistant, for example. Okay, medical students as well. Are there any medical students? Okay, a fair bit. And I thank you for raising up your hand. How many of us here are nursing staff or nursing students? Wow. Okay, a few. So it was Nurses Day a few days back. Happy belated Nurses Day. Okay, and lastly, how many of us here are allied health professionals? So like, for example, physiotherapists, speech therapists, psychologists. Okay. All right. Okay. And from this simple exercise that we have just done, in a way, what we are also trying to do is to establish our identity. So in our own life, we hold different identities. We can be fathers, we can be son, we can be staff in a workplace, we can be student in a academic campus as well. So these are some identities that differentiate us from others. Okay, so this is something that I want to share with you. And the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to ask you to share with me in the chat one word, one phrase, or one sentence to describe who you are. Okay. When you have thought about one word, one phrase, or one sentence to describe who you are, please put it in to the chat box. Okay. Okay. Is there anyone who feels comfortable enough to share one word, one phrase, or one sentence to describe who you are? Okay. 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 I'm going to allow about 30 more seconds to get the responses in. It is okay if you don't feel comfortable sharing, and that's perfectly fine as well. For those of us who are comfortable enough to share, I thank you for sharing your responses. Okay, and I'm going to share with everyone my response. So actually, I'm someone who is very shy. So unfortunately, the limelight is on me right now. So I have to muster some courage to share with everyone what are some of my thoughts with regards to boundaries. Okay, so I'm also curious as Chingyet was sharing about identity boundaries. He has actually shared a lot of valuable stuff. And I was just wondering, in our own personal life, is there somewhere where we are comfortable and we can establish a boundary for ourselves? So if if you have if you are able to establish a boundary somewhere comfortable, be it in workplace, be it in studies, be it in personal life, may I just encourage you to share that with us in the chat as well. And again, I just want to remind everyone that like whatever that we share over here stays here. Okay, I'm going to open this space up for 30 seconds. I'm just wondering if anyone would like to share with the rest, like in what areas in your life you are able to establish an identity or you're able to establish a boundary relatively comfortably. So it could be uh, relationships, it could be friendships, it could be housemanships, it could be practicum setting, it could be my relationship with my parents. I'm just wondering in what areas are you able to establish a boundary well? Okay, work-life balance. Yeah, I think that is a very important line, especially right now in COVID situation, where it's actually pushing us to work from home. And I think what is also happening when you are working from home is that because work is now done through a laptop, and the laptop is either in your bedroom, living room, or study room, and a laptop is only operated by a power button. It makes things so easy. So that's why I think with the work life situation, the work from home situation, I think there's an increasing challenge in the work life. And I thank you for sharing. Okay. I'm seeing some responses as well, like in terms of relationships, personal space. Okay, in terms of routine, yes, I think routine is something that's very important. And routine is also a good way of establishing boundary. Okay, I'm just going to give everyone about 10 to 15 more seconds. If you have something to share, please put it in. If you don't feel comfortable enough to share with everyone, maybe what I'm going to do is that you can actually, in the chat itself, there's a send to. You can actually just put it to share with me. Okay, so I think the next question that I'm going to share I'm going to ask can be a little bit sensitive. And I'm just wondering if there are any difficulties that you are going through right now in trying to establish boundaries. So again, I'm mindful that this could be a very raw question. This could be something that is potentially sensitive. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing with everyone, that's okay. However, if you would like someone to see, you can actually share it with the facilitators, which is Chingye or myself. And we are perfectly fine with that as well. Okay, maybe I'm just going to give you some time to think through in what areas do you find difficult to establish boundary. Okay, I'm just going to give everyone about maybe about 10 to 15 seconds to pen down your thoughts. I'm mindful that this could be a very long response, and that's perfectly fine as well. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing some responses. Okay. Okay, I'm going to share with you a story. I'm going to share with you a story, and this story goes like this. So there's this person who comes from a relatively comfortable family. Both parents are working, no financial issues. Father and mother are able to bring money home and support the family. So the story goes like this. While they have a very successful career, the parents have a very successful career, they actually quarrel every day. So things that so it can be simple things like, for example, getting dinner. It could be other issues like, for example, deciding on children's education, or it could be even like talking about preferences, what car to buy, or even where to go. There's constant tension point. And as a result, this person who saw the parents quarrel actually grew up not being loved, not being validated, not being affirmed. And do you want to make a guess where this person is going to look for love? And how is this person going to look for love? For some of the boys, what happened would be that they might find love validation through friends. And these friends may not be well-meaning friends. These friends may be friends who hang out at the lobby every day. But why do these children or why do these kids hang out every day at the lobby, at the void deck? For love, for validation, for affirmation? Or how about in relationship? Like how much are we willing to bend to get our love? Could there be a possibility that this person end up constantly being mindful about how the relationship is going to be like? and as a result, constantly being anxious, constantly being mindful, and constantly reminding the partner to show love towards her or him. Or could this also make the person crave into some of the demands that the partners are asking? It could be perhaps getting someone to do something that is compromising. For example, having sex, for example, or even to get a boyfriend or girlfriend to steal things. So I guess where I'm coming from sharing this story genetically is that I think growing up, talking about attachment, what actually happens is that there are different types of attachment. So if we look at young babies, what actually gave them the confidence to explore around them is actually their parents' love. So if you look at how a secure attachment looks like, how that is like is that like the baby knows that the authority figures, in this case the parents, are there. That gives them the stability and the courage to explore things around. Even though sometimes these parents may not be physically present, but these children know that the parents will show up somehow, maybe at the end of the day, when the parents finish their work and go home, or perhaps during their break when they are working from home. So that is an example of a secure attachment. So where I'm also trying to get at is that growing up, our experience shape the way we see things, and growing up, our growing up experience actually shape our attachment. So why are we talking about attachment in setting boundary? So the relationship is this: when we do not feel secure or safe about ourselves, then we are potentially going to face challenges in setting boundaries when we are relating with people. So one of the examples that we can see is in friendship, where I was sharing about gangsters, boys, hoodism. I'm also, I think in BGR, boy girl relationship, one of the things that we could see is that like when we don't feel safe and secure about ourselves, we end up bending our back too much to get the love that we need. And no, as I'm sharing this, I'm just wondering if this actually resonates with some of you because of perhaps your growing up experience, perhaps of the attachment that you are facing. We may not be really very sure, but I want to leave these thoughts with you, and that is that by His grace, we are healed. So I think that is something that actually encouraged me a lot as I was a teenager when I was trying to establish my own identity. And I would also like to share with you that like if you are going through this, if some of the parts of the story that I shared with you is resonating with you right now, it is okay because it is not too late to make any changes. Okay, it's not too late to make any changes now because the first step to making a change is actually to be aware. So if you are aware today, that means that there's a potential for change. So I think Ching Ye has also covered quite a fair bit about what are some of the things that can help us to change. Okay, and okay, so I think one of the things that I always encourage people whom I'm working with is to look at what they can say no in. So I think one of the experience that I see or in my work is that like, I think a lot of people feel paiseh to say no because they are afraid of how other people perceive them. So if you look a little bit deeper, why they are afraid of like how people perceive them, could be how they perceive themselves. They might not have a strong identity about themselves, and usually that might also be linked to the growing up experience. So perhaps one of the change that I would like to encourage you tonight is to perhaps explore and think about an area that you feel comfortable saying no? What are some of the things that help you to say no? And I wonder if you could actually bring this to different parts of your life into the areas that you're struggling with. So that being said, I also recognize that there are certain areas that it's easier to implement boundaries, and that would be in terms of like perhaps in work, or perhaps in perhaps in work, perhaps in study. It might be easier because we have some more straightforward ways of managing change. Like for example, coming up with a schedule to plan our time. And when doing this schedule, we can also incorporate some activities to make ourselves feel good. And these are what we call the self-care activities, activities that take care of our well-being. In certain areas, it can be a little bit tougher, and that would be more in terms of relationship. So the reason why it is challenging is also because I think when it comes to relationship, it's harder to draw that line. It's harder to demarcate a clear boundary. And I think what Ching Ye has done was also nicely bring in responsibilities. So if there are times that you feel that you are responsible for another person, hey, I just want to share with you another analogy. So this analogy is commonly found in safety. Whenever we are flying, it is part of our safety messaging. Do you remember if, let's say, in a situation where the air pressure drop, the airbags drop, who should we put on the airbag first? Should we put on the airbags for ourselves, or should we put on airbags for others first? For those of us who say we should put on airbags for others first, maybe let's go down that line a little bit more. Supposing in the midst of helping this other person to put on the airbag, the pressure really dropped very fast, and the both of you lose your consciousness as a result. Who gets saved in the end? However, if we look at the other way, if we put on the airbags for ourselves, we may end up in a better position that we can help others. So I use this analogy to talk about self-care, taking care of our emotional well-being, and yet at the same time, this analogy also helps us to understand a little bit more about our responsibility. So we have first and foremost responsibility as different identities that we are holding on to, be it as father, be it as daughter, be it as mother, be it as student, be it as staff. So I think we need to be clear. If let's say we are a staff, what is our responsibility? If we are a girlfriend, we are a boyfriend, we are a husband, we are a wife, what's our responsibility? So that will help us to understand where our responsibility start and where our responsibility ends. That will also help us to know that, okay, just like the airplane analogy, if it is our responsibility to put on the airbags for ourselves first, then when the situation comes, we have to practice that. And knowing that, rehearsing that, will help us to actually carry out this faster. So that is also the reason why in healthcare setting, we always talk about drills. So like for example, medical students, nursing staff, and doctors will know about code blue. So there's always a standard. There's always a standard protocol that we abide, and there's always a standard resuscitation method that we learn in BCLS or ACLS that we are expect. So we are trained such that like whenever a crisis comes, a situation comes, it becomes something so innate in us that we are able to carry that out well. So if you look at attachment, that is an analogy. So what the reason why we are avoidant, or the reason why we don't feel safe about ourselves, and hence we have some way of coping mechanism, is also because like over the years, like when we don't feel secure about ourselves, we are so comfortable in seeking validation from others, it has become a habit. So habit can be helpful, habit can be dangerous. So another way of helping us to establish healthy boundaries is to be aware about our habits and to constantly question ourselves if these habits are helpful or not. So similarly, when Ching Ye was talking about distorted thinking, so actually I will also want to leave with you like some analogy about us being scientists or us being investigators of our own thoughts. So like for example, there might be some examples of distorted thinking that someone who feel insecure maybe. So for example, so when someone who is feeling insecure, they may be constantly seeking validation from, let's say, their partners. So as a result, what could possibly happen is that they may not, so even their partners ill treat them or abuse them, they may not see that it is their partner's fault. They will personalize that it is their fault, even though clearly the person who actually harm the person is actually the partner. So to a degree, I sense sometimes we may not be able to see our distorted thinking until we take a step back to analyze the situation better. And what can also happen is that, like sometimes in our attachment, when we are so comfortable in our way of dealing with our relationship, that we often forget that, hey, that we often forget to see things from an objective manner, that we often forget to take a step back to see, hey, is this something that is helpful? Is this something that is healthy? So I'm going to leave what I'm going to share or what I have shared about the story, some of the tips in terms of like knowing the habits and also how habits could have been formed through our behavior and through our thoughts. So I'm going to leave what I have shared here at this point, and I'm also just going to open up this space. I wonder if some of you have any questions with regards to what Chinye and myself have actually talked about.
And now this is the best time to ask. We have QY, who is the counseling psychologist, here with us tonight. So, and he often works with young people. Yeah, and so don't miss your chance to ask any related questions on boundaries. Okay, maybe I'll start the ball, rolling so that you'll spark off some questions. Maybe I ask you, Qin Yao lah. Let's say because we live in an Asia context where parents can be very influential, right, in our lives. So how, because we're not like the Westerners where maybe speaking up has been more, easy for them. So how do we actually start to set our own boundaries in this context with our parents?
I must say that is a very tough question. I think growing up in Asian culture, I think one of the values that we have is respect, and how we often visualize or operationalize respect is that we often see it as a form of like other people's, okay, if the elders say do certain things, you follow. So can you see that like our way of respect is that like we learn to say yes without so I think when we say yes, it comes forth as a way of showing respect to people who are in authority. I think in this case it's about parents. So that being said, I think it's a balance between that and having the courage to share what is really in your mind. So I think perhaps rehearsing through some ways of sharing your thoughts can be helpful. Like for example, if you really have something that is very pressing, something that is that you want to share with your parents and you find it difficult to, maybe one of the ways to do it could be to do it in to rehearse through by writing. Or you can also do it in a non or not so active manner. Like for example, you can craft out a message, and then you can send the message via WhatsApp or maybe something that or snail mail like pen and paper. So that might be one way of sharing your thoughts respectfully. So I think maybe going back to Chinye's question, it will be like, if you were to look at respect, could there be another way of defining respect? Is respect just about saying yes all the time? So if let's say we need to, so if let's say we are going to change the way we see respect, how would respect be like? Is it like maybe recognizing what the other person has to say, acknowledging that? So I leave this as a thought for you, as in like for the participants as well. So yeah, so I think we kind of covered a little bit more about respect. We also kind of covered how then can we respectfully say or share our thoughts with other people. So I think the balance then is that I think in the Bible we are called to obey our parents as well, because they are authority. So I think, that being said, as a son, I think my responsibility would have to be, I have to recognize what my parents say, and I pray that like in a way it will be a decision that like is God honoring. So I guess that is how I manage that as a son in my relationship with my parents in the area of respect. So I've also seen two questions. Both are fairly similar, and that is about difficulties or challenges in trying to say no, be it in social gathering or be it in appointments. So there seems to be there seems to be some difficulty in saying no. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the factors that make you want to say yes to meetups? Is it like you are concerned about how others would perceive you if you say no? Or is it like maybe you find it difficult because you don't have the vocabulary? So what also helps is that if you are aware where the deficit is, like is it a skill, or is it like constantly we have some perception that may be hindering us or not helping us to see a healthy sense of ourselves, then we manage that differently. So like for example, if let's say if it is a perception, like we are constantly worried about how other people would see, okay, we are constantly worried about how people would see us. If we say no, then perhaps one of the things that I would want to identify is that do you think that people would see you as who you are because of you saying no? So what I'm trying to do is that there could be some distorted thinking over there, and I'm also trying to challenge that distorted thinking, perhaps by asking some question, doing some social experiment. No, how about like trying to say no for once and see how other people would change or they don't change in the way they interact with you. So sometimes being a scientist or I think because we all come from healthcare, so I think science is a fundamental here. So I'm going to use science back in handling boundaries. So I think if we know some of the distorted thinking, we can craft it into a scientific experiment and test it out. That can also challenge the way we think. So I think that's one. If it is behavior, then maybe my question to you is that would it be helpful perhaps to rehearse some lines? So like for a different situation, like for example, if let's say it is your partner, boyfriend or girlfriend say you want to go out and you want to say no, maybe having that scenario in mind, you can rehearse some lines to say no. So you can use for different situations. Like for example, one would be from partners, one would be from your parents, one would be from your friends, one would be from your classmates. Because I think everyone will ask, or they may ask different things from you, and you may have to say no in different ways. So perhaps by rehearsing different scenarios, that may help you to be more equipped. So another way of doing it behaviorally in behavioral manners could be to perhaps to be a little bit more bold, to be a little bit more assertive or a little bit clearer in communicating. So let your no be no, let your yes be yes. So don't go about saying, oh, maybe lah, perhaps. I don't know, leh. So sometimes having some filler words like this can also send out an unclear message to our sender. So they may not say, they may not see that as a question that or some question that is in your mind. They may just see that, okay, yes, you are in. Because we perceive things differently. So what then can be helpful is that if we could be clearer in our words, that can help. Okay, so then if let's say you try to say no and the person rejects your no, that's going to be very interesting because I wonder when a person rejects your no, what does that mean to you? What does that relationship mean to you? Is it something that constantly happen? If it constantly happen, then maybe I would want you to think a little bit more about your boundaries. Like in general, are you having difficulties establishing yourself? So going back to how a healthy boundary looks like, it is like what Qingye has shared earlier about the circle, things that you can control. So similarly, I think if a person who can't accept or who okay, so I think going back to the circle, what is helpful is that there could be some reasons that you will definitely say no. So knowing how to say no is helpful, and helping or understanding that model is helpful because it helps you to identify and establish your boundary. So going back to the question, what if the person reject your no? It will be perhaps to look at how what the relationship is. If it is potentially not a helpful relationship, then maybe I would encourage you to talk to someone else. If perhaps one of the things that can also be helpful is to when someone rejects your no, you can always perhaps ask back, why do you reject my no? Why? So sometimes reflecting or sometimes you can reflect back. Okay, so going back to the question, reflecting back a person's behavior can also be helpful in helping the other person to understand because the other person may not have seen it as a no. So when you reflect back and say that reflect back the person's words or behavior, that may help the other person to be aware about what the person is thinking, saying, or behaving. So that can also be helpful in trying to establish your boundaries and guidelines. So if you look at how police handle rowdy people, for example, what they will usually do is that they will usually hurt the person. They will reflect the other person. Then in the last case, then they will resort to physical harm. So there is some tested and proven techniques that you can try to be assertive. I hope I answered your question. If it is not that clear, can you reply back to me so that I know that I am not that clear? And if there's any way that I could be clearer, maybe let me know as well. Okay, so I think we kind of like have touched on how to say no.
Oh, so Qingye, just now you were answering someone's questions, right? It's about how to say no, is it?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Yeah, because I didn't catch the question that was being asked. It was sent privately to you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That, anybody else? I mean, especially, I think just now Qingye mentioned a few tips, right, about how to express yourself. So let's say if you have currently a relationship that you are facing, you can actually use him as an example, to practice.
Oh yes. Sorry, Qingye. If
Yes.
there's something that I can add on, right, is that
Right.
if let's say you are experiencing difficulty, like be it in terms of thoughts or be it in terms of skills, right? What can also be helpful is that if you are a student, you can look out for counseling services that is provided by your school. So working with someone who is in this field, who may have like been trained in some behavior or some cognitive techniques can be helpful. So if let's say you are a staff, then maybe looking out for what we commonly call the Employee Assistance Program, EAP, can be helpful as well. Because some of the companies actually do provide mental health services, complimentary mental health services for their staff. Okay, so can I also check in to see if like we have some questions?
Okay, since you're waiting for any questions to come in, so maybe you would like to also type in, let's say from today's session, what is one action that you can take from tomorrow onwards, okay, in this aspect of setting boundaries. Shall we? So type in, what is one action you can take in whatever relationships you're having in terms of setting boundaries.
Okay, as you are thinking about, as you are thinking about one action plan, oh yes, I think that's actually very helpful. Like having an action plan to concretize like some of the things that we kind of talk about is helpful. I'm also going to share with you a story about so this is, you can actually Google this story. So it's about the tree who's set healthy boundaries. So I actually share it as a website. You may be able, okay, I'm not so sure if that is working. Okay, maybe hold on, let me try another method.
Okay, as we wait for Qin Yao to set it up, so if just type in, key in what is one action point that you can take for yourself to set healthy boundaries. Well, thanks, Isabel. Yep, make good God-honoring choices and decisions. Yeah, this is needful, challenging as well. Wow, flexing that muscle, the no muscle.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Maybe as y'all are thinking about one action point, I think that another question just popped in. So I thought that maybe I might just want to take a few minutes to address that, if that's okay with you, Jin.
Okay.
Okay. So the question goes a little bit like this: like in professional setting, in healthcare institution, we always see a lot of clients, a lot of patients. So to a degree of extent, I think sometimes it tips us, because like for example, in a normal setting, our load maybe is about 15 clients or 15 patients a day. So I think there are also some situations that we may be overwhelmed with patients, and it could be because of some situations, or maybe it could really just be like the hospital management, poor hospital management, ending up leading us to seeing an overwhelmed number of um, patients. So I think in this kind of situation, one of the things that I would advise is that perhaps what can also be helpful is to have a understanding with a supervisor. what is like so going back is about like setting common goal, common boundaries. So like if let's say so I think some of the things that can be helpful would be like, okay, for example, in everyday setting, how many patients do you expect me to see? So if let's say that overflow, what is the max that I have to see? So having some clarity on that can be helpful in terms of management, in terms of your own time management as well. So I think in this kind of situation, what can also be helpful is to do triaging. So I think especially if let's say we are working in a public healthcare situation, we may have to really triage based on need, because at the end of the day, we know that patients who are more severely ill would require our services and attention more. So that again go back to our identity, our responsibilities. So knowing how to identify what is severe, not so severe, mild, and normal, okay patient is helpful, is important. So if you have that clarity in mind, then what then can also be helpful is that in trying to see your patient, client load, managing, charging them can be helpful. So perhaps from medical and the side point is, okay, maybe from a psychiatric point would be more of like, okay, suicide risk. So we know that if let's say someone with suicide risk, we need to stabilize first, then we can carry on with intervention. Because at the end of the day, even if we carry on intervention, but the person lost his life, there's no more intervention because the person is gone. Okay, so I think going back to where it is, knowing our responsibilities, having a clarity in terms of maybe how what would be helpful is that having a clarity in terms of work responsibilities, something that is agreed between yourself and your supervisors, can be helpful. And unfortunately, there are times that the world is unfair. So despite us doing our very best, we may get negative review. And I think that again go back to our identity. Like do we see how do we see ourselves? Like are we, like for me, am I QY because people like me? Am I QY because my clients like me?
Okay, thank you, Xin Yao. Yeah. Any last questions that's burning in your heart that you need to get it off your chest? Well, this is the second principle of growth, to become an authentic and healthy healthcare professional. I mean, it's not even just a healthcare professional. I think it's about as a person, because if you're growing healthily as a person, you can be that healthy and authentic healthcare professional. Yeah, because your private life is going to affect your public life in terms of your profession, in be it right now as a student or as a healthcare professional right now. So this aspect, because each of you who are serving in the healthcare profession line, you're on the front line, the pressures are there. Some of you are already working there. You all know the pressure. It's no joke. And what better way to really serve your patients, your clients well, is really to take care of yourself first. As what Chin Yao mentioned about the aspect of putting on that airbag uh, on the airplane. Yeah, there's been each time, maybe it's been too long since we take a flight. We have missed watching the safety flight briefing. Yes, put on the airbag yourself first before you put it on for the children. So the importance of really self-care, taking care of yourself, right? And at the end of it, this building boundaries, healthy boundaries, is an aspect of loving ourselves and also loving others. Because once you know who you are, you're clear about your identity, that's when you can give yourself the best to another person. That's when you can decide that as you give of yourself, you're giving cheerfully. and willingly, not out of obligation or may be manipulated. Okay. So in our chat earlier on, I put down the Facebook group. Just invite you all to join in. I'm slowly building up the content. Yeah, because it just created today. So I really over time I do hope that it can be a community where different one of us can be involved in and also to contribute uh, useful articles, posts that can keep each one of us, in the healthcare profession to be aware of the different aspects of growing to become a healthy and an authentic healthcare professional. Okay, right. So before we end, shall we take a picture? Just open up the screen. Right, it's great to see you all, man. It's so different. Yeah, it's so different when we can see each other's face. Yeah, let's try to do that next weekend, shall we? That we can see each other's face, and it will encourage and really motivate myself and the guests next week, right? Yeah, we have different guests each week, and we get to hear from different one of us. Okay, what about the rest? Yeah, awesome. I just wait for a few more. Yeah, I hope that this last three sessions has been helpful. Yeah, do email me. You have my email at gnet@crew.org.sg. Let me know how has it been helpful or some feedback on the session that over the next we got two more sessions to go that we can make some changes to it so that it will be beneficial because this webinar series is all about you for you all to support you all in your growth in your development. Okay, so let's look. Ready? Okay, let's put up thumbs up. Ready? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. All right. Yeah, awesome. Good night, everyone. Chin Yao and I will still be hanging around. So if any questions, you can just stay back.
Yep.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Take care. See you all next week. Bye bye.